Blog Talk Radio. Welcome back to Zion's Redemption Radio Network. Today we're going to be reading Chapter 9 of the Church and the Gospel, pages 115 to 126. The name of the title of the chapter is Rebaptism. I'll just get right into the reading. This is actually kind of a longer chapter, so this is probably going to be a part 1 and part 2 type of thing. There remains a practice throughout the pages of history which has ascribed but little attention from most historians. This practice was the doctrine and ordinance of rebaptism. Those who have heard or read about this ordinance have assumed it was done to complete mission records or to readmit some member back into the church after an excommunication. However, this practice was performed both anciently and in modern times for a wide variety of reasons. For nearly 60 years in our own dispensation, almost every member of the church had experienced rebaptism at least once. From the days of the prophet Joseph Smith to the turn of the century, rebaptism became an integral part of the teachings and faith of the Latter-day Saints. Scriptural references. The Book of Mormon contains specific references to rebaptism. Nephi, it is written, baptized many believers and ordained men unto this ministry. And there were many in the commencement of this year that were baptized unto repentance. AD 32, see 3 Nephi, chapter 7, verse 26. However, a few years later, after the destruction of the nation, it is written that Nephi again went down into the water and was baptized. 3 Nephi, chapter 19, verse 11. Thus, Nephi complied with the principle of rebaptism and being a leader among his people, he established the precedent for the practice, and they followed his example. Or on page 116 at 7%. Nephi proceeded to baptize the others, and it came to pass, when they were all baptized and had come forth up out of the water, the Holy Ghost did fall upon them. 3 Nephi chapter 19, verse 13. Alma also participated in the principle of rebaptism. After he received the authority and had been converted, then he preached the principles of faith, repentance, and baptism, and baptized a goodly number of believers. Then on a later occasion, while baptizing a man by the name of Helaman, Alma became so influenced by the beauty and blessing of baptism that he also was buried in the waters of baptism. Alma therefore certainly experienced a rebaptism, and he came forth up out of the water rejoicing, being filled with the Spirit. Mosiah chapter 18, verses 13 through 14. At the final eclipse of the great Nephite empire, the nation had grown cold in the principles of righteousness. The last plea for return to the gospel was made by Moroni, who wrote, quote, "And now I speak concerning baptism. Behold, elders, priests, and teachers were baptized, and they were not baptized, save they brought forth fruit, meet that they were worthy of it. Moroni chapter 6, verse 1. The elders, priests, and teachers were, of course, members and officers of the Church of Jesus Christ, yet they were baptized. To become members of the church and hold the office of elder and priest, they must first have been baptized. Therefore, these members were rebaptized after they had repented by bringing forth the fruit of repentance. Thus, the doctrine of rebaptism, like the doctrine of baptisms for the dead, has a few substantiating scriptural references. Even one is enough to establish it as a doctrine and practice of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Page 117 at 17%. The last dispensation. The first baptisms into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints were in reality rebaptisms. Since Joseph Smith and others had been baptized before the organization of the church, and they were baptized again when they became members of the newly formed church. When John the Baptist appeared to the prophet Joseph Smith, he conferred upon Joseph the priesthood of Aaron and commanded the prophet and Oliver Cowdery to go and be baptized. The prophet Joseph Smith wrote, "He commanded us to go and be baptized and gave us direction that I should baptize Oliver Cowdery and that afterwards he should baptize me. Accordingly, we went and were baptized." Pearl of Great Price, Joseph Smith History, Volume 2, verse 70. This was in May of 1829. Then nearly a year later it was written that Joseph Smith and those who had been baptized prior to April 6, 1830, were again baptized on the day of the organization of the church. Deseret News, March 30th, 1935, page 6. So basically, Joseph and Oliver were baptized in 1829, and then they were rebaptized when the church was organized officially in 1830. B.H. Roberts felt that the number of those that had been baptized up to the 6th of April 1830 must have been but 9. Doctrinal History of the Church, Volume 1, page 77. These were all being baptized a second time for entrance into the church. It is interesting to note that the principle of rebaptism was in the heart of Brigham Young even before it was taught to him. When he found out he could be rebaptized, he also learned that principle by revelation. Page 118, 24%. I know that in my traveling and preaching, many a time I have stopped by a beautiful stream of clear, pure water and have said to myself, how delightful it would be to me to go into this and be baptized for the remission of my sins. When I got home, Joseph told me it was my privilege. At this time came a revelation that the saints could be baptized and rebaptized when they chose, and then that we could be baptized for our dear friends. Journal of Discourses, Volume 18, page 241. And we have to have the ordinances at least once, but there's no reason why we can't do specific ordinances over and over again if that's what we choose. And rebaptism is something that I have participated in, and it's just it's a renewal. It's greater than the sacrament. It's a physical act of contrition and I don't know, it's just there's something about being rebaptized that really resets things. Continuing on, 2 years before Brigham Young died, he was again rebaptized, so this is in 1875. It is said that this was the 7th time he had been baptized. See Church Chronology, page 94. Renewing covenants. In renewing baptismal covenants, the Latter-day Saints did not consider the first covenants invalid. Rather, rebaptism was a means and evidence of a double effort to reaffirm their intentions and responsibilities toward God and the Church. Such an ordinance was an outward token of an inward faith and desire to keep God's laws and commandments. The proposition of rebaptism was joyfully and very generally accepted by the saints. This procedure, however, must not be regarded as casting any doubt upon the validity of their original baptisms or a repudiation of it as a sacrament. It was only to make more solemn the renewal of covenants with God. Correlated History of the Church by D.H. Roberts, Volume 2, pages 286 and 287. When the saints reached the Great Salt Lake Valley, a new life seemed to open up for the Mormons. The land and its seclusion presented grand hopes and rich prospects for the future. Here they were at least temporarily free from the reach of mobs, injustices, and tyrants. They acquired the new farms, the new communities, and the new freedoms. These conditions offered them another chance to live their religion unmolested. However, in taming the desert, building settlements, and defending themselves from the Indians, they would of necessity depend on each other more than ever before. Failures, weaknesses, or apostasy could spell out disaster to their very existence. Under such circumstances, they wanted to start afresh once more. On this day, the 12 were rebaptized. Why? Because the Church, having broke old ties in the East, was in a way experiencing a new birth. Because owing to conditions of life on the plains, regular church routine could not always be observed. For this reason, for non-observance of certain regulations were made by the people and accepted by their leaders. And now, those who stood at the head of the church wanted a gesture of support to themselves and a sign that willing obedience would be given to the rules of the church. This was affected by rebaptism. End quote. Wilfred Woodruff's Journal, August 6, 1847. The purpose of rebaptism, as before mentioned, was not just for the individuals who had lost their records, although many records were lost. The purpose of rebaptism at this time was for a renewal of covenants and a remission of sins. Rebaptism began with the first presidency of the church and the quorum of the 12 apostles. From then, it proceeded throughout the rest of the church. President Young must have taken quite seriously such irregularities of the camp of the pioneers, as we have already noted in a former chapter, for he now proposed to them a solemn renewal of their covenants to righteousness. a new avowal of their acceptance of the gospel of Jesus Christ by baptism. President Young himself to set the example. This was first proposed to the 12 and their immediate associates, and then to the camp. Correlated History of the Church, Volume 2, page 287. And we're on page 120 at 43%. Bancroft's History of Utah gives the number of the saints in the valleys at this time at 400. On the 8th of August, he records the rebaptisms to be almost that number. See Bancroft's History of Utah, 1840 to 1886, page 264. The practice of rebaptism upon entering the Great Salt Lake Valley was taught and encouraged for many years. 18 years after the first rebaptism in the valley, it was still being taught. For in 1865, the Apostle Orson Pratt stated, "That seems to be a kind of standing ordinance for all Latter-day Saints who immigrate here. From the first presidency down, are all rebaptized and set out anew by renewing their covenants." Journal of Discourses, Volume 18, page 160. As part of the Reformation, during the years of 1856 to 1857, a spiritual movement began in the church and was to become known as the Reformation. It had been nearly 10 years since the saints entered these valleys, and many of them had become lax and inactive. While they were so busily engaged in building homes, in irrigation canals, and in cultivating the land, the saints were neglecting to a great extent the duties of their religion. President Brigham Young sensed a need to reform and reactivate Israel. So Israel, the Gentiles, basically, the church members, sensed a need to reform and reactivate Israel to the work of the Lord. So he called upon his counselor, Jedediah M. Grant, to establish the theme of Live Your Religion. On September 13, 1856, Jedediah proceeded to a 4-day conference in Kaysville and began his assignment with the emphasis on reforming the saints. Sorry, I'm starting to get tired here. I'm actually at 51%, which we're moving along a lot quicker than I thought we would. At this Kaysville conference, President Grant delivered a soul-stirring oration which was to sweep over the entire church. Every ward, branch, and mission felt the effect of the message of this conference. President Grant said he felt like rebaptizing the saints over again. By the way, we're on page 120 at 52%. On the third day of this conference, upon calling for a vote as to whether they were willing to renew their covenants, it was given unanimously, and nearly 500 saints were immersed under the direction of President Grant, aided by Bishop Taylor, Elders Clements, Allred, Curtis, Winnell, William Booth, Jr., Payne, and Dinsidell, President Grant baptized upwards of 80 with his own hands. The Spirit of God was poured out to a great degree, and peace and happiness characterized the whole assembly. Deseret News, September 1856, page 228. From Kaysville, President Grant and his assistants went to Farmington, Centerville, Jordan, Hill, etc., proposing the ordinance of rebaptism in each area. Thus, the wave of reform had begun, and this so-called Reformation was beginning to spread throughout the church. These rebaptisms were not without divine approval, as spiritual gifts and powers attested to this fact. Brigham Young's advice to the saints was in the form of a stern rebuke for their sins and counsel to be rebaptized until they were forgiven. Quote, I have heard some of you cursing and swearing, even some of the elders of Israel. I would be baptized 7 times were I in your place. I would not stop teasing some good elder to baptize me again and again until I could think of my sins forgiven. I would not live over another night until I was baptized enough to satisfy me that my sins were forgiven. Then go and be confirmed, as you were when you first embraced the religion of Jesus. That is my counsel. That is my counsel. Journal of Discourses, Volume 2, pages 8 and 9. Entering the United Order. In the year 1874, the United Order was again restored as a practice of the Church. It was necessary to reestablish that pertinent part of the gospel and to begin afresh by living those higher laws. Rebaptism became means and evidence for the dedication, renewing of covenants, and the consecrating of pure heart to the Lord. The United Order was a temporal and a spiritual law, and the saints were rebaptized before entering into that sacred principle. The following instructions were directed from the first presidency of the Church to all who would enter into the United Order. On January 2nd, he, speaking of John Bushman, was baptized into the United Order by William H. Wynne and confirmed by Israel Evans the same day. This was the instruction from the church authorities that all renew their covenants and work in the United Order. And that's according to John Bushman's diary, page 131. December 30th, 1875, this afternoon, Mary, Fanny, and myself were baptized for the remission of sins and renewal of our covenants and for the observance of the rules of the United Order under the direction of L. John Nuttall, who administered the ordinances of baptism. And that is the diary of J.H. Standiford. Before temple ordinances and marriage. It was a common practice for couples who were to be married to be rebaptized before participating in the wedding ceremony. This was done in both monogamous and plural marriages. Since the marriage ceremony should be a most solemn and sacred ordinance, it should be entered into with a clean soul. Men and women entered into eternal covenants and began a new and more responsible way of life. And we're on page 123 at 69%. Rebaptism was a principle advocated for the purpose of helping couples begin this sacred step with the best possible assurance that it would be successful. How blessed were couples about to be married and to be rebaptized for the remission of sins. They could then, with a clear conscience and in cleanliness and purity, enter into the sacred ordinance of God together. September 17th, 1886. As it was customary to get baptized to prepare for my temple ordinances before going to the temple, so as to be free from all sin and wrong, I arranged with Brother Latham, who has charge of baptisms on the temple block, to be baptized. I had already made arrangements to get Ida's recommend to be baptized at 2 p.m. I took Ida to the old endowment house, and after a word of prayer and a few remarks, by Brother Latham, he baptized us and confirmed us for the renewal of our covenants. And that's Diary of John M. Whitaker, Book 3, page 16. They, George Richards and his wife, were married March 9th, 1882 in the Endowment House in Salt Lake City, Utah, with the groom's father performing the ceremony. He gave the bride a $5 gold piece, and he said he hoped Alice would make George a good wife. It was customary in those days to be rebaptized before being married. This young couple adhered to that practice, though 1 foot of ice in Big Creek had to be broken in order to do so. I'm sorry, The Life of George F. Richards, page 8. I really want to pause it and just take a nap for a little bit, but I can't. I want to get this done so that I can put it out tonight as one program. I thought it would be 2. I thought I would be doing 2 different things, but I'm already 77% through it, so I don't have a lot of commentary about rebaptism, which is probably good, but healing the sick. One of the requests for rebaptisms was for healing the sick. Strange as this may appear, history has proven this practice to be very beneficial in many of the cases where it has been performed, and we're on page 124 at 78%. One of the first accounts of baptisms for the sick recorded by the prophet Joseph Smith. He baptized his wife Emma for her illness, and this is the journal entry. Tuesday, October 4th, 1842. Emma was very sick again, and I attended with her all the day, being somewhat poorly myself. Wednesday the 5th, my dear Emma was worse. Many fears and were entertained that she would not recover. She was baptized twice in the river, which evidently did her much good. She grew worse again at night and continued very sick indeed. I was unwell and with and much troubled on the account of Emma's sickness. Doctrinal History of the Church, Volume 5, page 167 and 168. Emma had been baptized in Colville in 1830. This rebaptism was 12 years later. Even previous to this account, the baptisms for healing were quite common. They were performed in the Nauvoo Temple along with other rebaptisms. Baptism for the dead and for the healing of the body must be done in the font. Sorry, I'm having a really hard time here, but I'm getting so close. I'm at 83%. And those coming into the church and those rebaptized may be baptized in the river. Doctrinal History of the Church, Volume 4, page 586. Others were baptized in streams and rivers. Another similar experience comes from the life of Lorenzo Snow. Quote, upon arriving in Pisgah, Lorenzo and family of his family remained for a season. At this place, Lorenzo said, I was taken seriously and dangerously ill with a burning fever, which so affected my brain that I was delirious many days, lying at the point of death while in this condition. Elder Phineas Richards, the father of Apostle F.D. Richards, insisted by other kind brethren and took me from my bed, wrapped in a sheet, placed me in a carriage, drove me to the stream of water, and baptized me in the name of the Lord for my recovery. The fever immediately abated, and through the kind, unwearied nursing and attention by my faithful, loving wives and my dear sister, E.R.S. Smith, abided on the throne. Oh my gosh. Faithful, loving wives and my dear sister, E.R.S. Smith, aided and sanctioned through the priesthood and blessing I was delivered from suffering and restored to health. The sickness was the result of extreme hardship and exposures consequent on the journey. Life of Lorenzo Snow by Romney, 1846, page 80 and 81. This would indicate that rebaptism for health purposes were practiced for at least 42 years. Rebaptisms discontinued up to 1897. Rebaptisms, so this is discontinued. Up to 1897, rebaptisms was a popular principle, but that year a decision was made that when it should be done, but that year a decision was made that it should be discontinued. It had become a controversial subject, and at that October conference, Apostle George Q. Cannon announced, "We hear a good deal of talk about rebaptism, and the First Presidency and the 12 have felt that so much rebaptism ought to be stopped." Conference report for October 1897, page 68. The following year, there was further evidence that the practice of rebaptism had come to an end Mr. Van Cott, just what was your point with the Apostle Cowley about that ordinance of rebaptism? Mr. Lundstrom, it was in regard to the discountenance of rebaptizing, which previously had been customary when cases came up and rebaptizing was requested by the parties, and at that time we received instructions not to rebaptize anymore. Read Smoot's case, volume 2, page 159. It is strange that in a period of about 70 years, rebaptism became too popular and too extensively used, and then for the next 70 years it was done away with entirely. It is now said that taking the sacrament is sufficient to renew one's covenants. To summarize, number one, rebaptisms were performed in ancient times and in the early days of the Restoration. Number two, rebaptism was established as a gospel doctrine by revelation from the Lord. Number three, it was practiced for many reasons. Number four, entrance or re-entrance into the church. Number five, establishing dates for lost records. Number six, renewing the covenants. Number seven, entering the united order. Number eight, entering marriage. Number nine, accepting of church positions, like, for instance, to be called to a bishopric or in the bishopric, stake presidents, and apostles. Number 10, healing of the sick. Number 11, for the remission of sins. And number 12, and others such as preparatory to the missions, etc. It was not discontinued in the late 1890s because the Lord revoked it, but because it was felt that practice was too frequently used. Anyway, so when I come back for the next radio program, I'll be on chapter 10, and we're going to talk about the United Order. So that's the reading. Thank you for listening. Okay. Yeah, I was having a hard time doing that one. I did finish the United Order, which is chapter 10, I think. Let me see here. Yep, that's the next chapter, the United Order. So I'll put that one out next. I actually fell out of my truck. So I did that while I was in the truck, on one of my 10-hour breaks that I have to take. And then I did part of one United Order chapter, and then there's a part two. I can get it all in on one program, though, on one podcast. But I finished the part two of that yesterday at home. It actually worked 5 5 14-hour shifts, and at the end of my shift, about 3 in the morning, I was cleaning the truck out because I share the truck with one other individual who takes it for 3 or 4 days. If I work 4 days, he works 4 days. If I work 5 days, he works 3 days in my truck, and then he takes another truck. But anyway, they asked me to work an extra day. And I was cleaning the truck out because usually I'll sleep for a couple of hours and then I'll clean it out when it gets light out. But my wife had a doctor's appointment. I wanted to go to it. So I knew I couldn't do that, go to the doctor's appointment if I take the nap. So instead of taking a nap, I was cleaning the truck out, and I was almost done. And I got up on the side step of the passenger side of the semi-truck, and I grabbed a bag of trash, and I stepped back like I was on the bottom step, but I wasn't. I was on the top step, and for some reason my brain didn't think straight or something. And when I went to where I thought I was going to touch, the ground, there was no ground to touch, and I flew backwards with a bag of trash about 5 feet from the truck, and I landed. I didn't hurt my butt, so I'm not exactly sure how I fell, but I kind of feel like my feet hit the ground first, but not. I don't know, because I think I would have had a bruised behind if that were the case. But what happened was I did land on my back, and I do remember when my back hit, my head kind of whipped back and hit the ground, and I was wearing a hat and a headset listening to a podcast, and I had a lanyard on, excuse me, around my neck with my phone and my H2S monitor that was around my neck in the cases, and all of that flew another 5 to 7 feet behind me. And luckily there wasn't a bunch of rocks and stuff where I fell. It was pretty much just dirt, but I put my hands back kind of to catch myself, I think, and hit my hands and my elbows when I hit my back. So I just laid there. I had the wind knocked out of me, and I was holding my hands above my chest, just trying to get my air back, and then breathing rapidly for about 10 minutes. And oh my gosh, it hurt so much. And my hands and elbows already hurt because I had surgery on my right arm and wrist and the palm of my hand on, I think it was June 20th, and then on my left palm, wrist, and hand on July 18th. So lifting all week, lifting the heavy hoses that I have to lift because I haul crude oil, and that's how you load the tankers and unload the tankers. It hurts. Everything hurts, and especially my arms and my wrists. I probably shouldn't be working right now, but I'm working. So anyway, so when I hit my hands down on the ground, my hands already hurt. It's hard for me to open the valves because I have to use the palm of my hand to push it and close it on these butterfly valves. And there's no room for me to do anything different, and it hurts. And now it hurts even worse. So unfortunately, I have to go back to work tomorrow on Monday. And I've been, resting in bed for 2 days, my third day off. just trying to get back to chill enough to go back to work. Seems like I'm always in pain and I'm always tired, but somehow I'm able to do my job. And I'm just tired because I'm worn out because I work so hard. And because I've been driving a semi-truck for so many years, all of the shaking and bumping around in the semi-truck has hurt me physically. And I still love driving truck, but the pain sometimes it gets to be pretty ridiculous. And now falling straight on my back from the height of the top step of a semi-truck also isn't helping, because I have, before the other day, I don't know what it is now, hopefully it hasn't changed, I have 2 bulge discs in my neck, 2 in my my upper and my mid back, and 2 in my lower back, 2 bulge discs in my lower back. The one in my mid upper back, it's like my mid back. It's torn and it's leaking fluid from it, and it's the worst kind of bulge. It's a ruptured bulge. And then the ones in my lower back, one of them's pinching the nerves. It goes to one of my legs. Excuse me. So, this is all from driving a truck for so many years. And the other thing, like, God told me to do this back in 2003 when I spoke with Jesus Christ face to face. He told me to stay in this until he tells me to get out of it. And so I'm just doing this. I don't know what else I would do. I've always been a truck driver, and I enjoy the work, and I'm able to keep up with the younger guys, but keeping up at the cost of great pain. It sucks. I hate it. I hate the pain part. I hate. But you know what? I've been in pain almost the entirety of my life in one way, shape, or form. I haven't really known a life without having pain, and I've learned to endure and to push through it. But it gets so exhausting sometimes, and it might be the reason why I get depressed, because it's all the time. So anyway, I hope that those of you who do listen to these programs are being educated by them. I'm glad that those of you who do listen, and I'm glad that people read as well when I post these in my groups. Today I've already posted this one in LDS Last Days Prophecy and Gospel Discussions, and my other groups, and my other pages, which I'll just tell you what is Zion's Redemption Radio Network. You can find those pages on Facebook, and the group LDS Last Days Prophecy and Gospel Discussions was on Facebook as well. So we don't have anybody in the chat room except for me. I said hello, and then there's nobody in the studio either. So I'm going to end the program. Thank you for listening. I hope everybody has a wonderful day and a great. We will talk to you again when I publish or when I do the program on the United Order, which I think is a really important program. So take care, everyone. God bless.
In the dynamic world of programmatic ad buying, Viant is your ultimate CTV partner. Target with precision, buy with confidence. Viant empowers you with AI-driven technology that reaches your audience where they engage most, ensuring your message hits home, and the campaign results? Transparent, thanks to Viant's advanced measurement suite. For media buyers who demand the best, Viant delivers. Viant, elevate your CTV campaign performance.